everybody, and welcome to week 2 of your garden kit container lesson. I want to introduce you to my new cameraman. This is Sean. Can you turn it around and show yourself and wave?
No.
No?
No.
My middle son, Sean, is our cameraman today. So maybe he'll get to say hi to you at some point today. But
Yeah.
Today we're going to focus on parsley. Parsley is going to be the name of the game today. And there's just a couple things that you are going to need. Scissors, which I would recommend washing before you use them if you've been using them for other things besides gardening. A cup or jar of water, and then a bowl of water. So that is the supplies that you're going to need today, as well as you're going to need your notebook. So gather those things and come out to where your plants are. And the first thing we're going to do today is we're going to check in on all our plants, see how they're doing. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about managing how much water. And then we're going to talk about harvesting. And we're going to do our first harvest today. We're going to harvest parsley. I'm going to give you some great general tips for harvesting and ways that you can cook with parsley, a little bit of fun facts about parsley, and then you'll be on your way. So let's check out how our plants are doing. First, let's close up on this one. Those are our radishes, and if yours are like mine at all, they definitely popped this week. What you see right there, they call those the codling leaves. A lot of plants have leaves that look like that. They're real smooth when they first pop out, and those are not considered their true leaves. Those are just their first leaves that pop out. And then soon, the next set of leaves that you see will be called the true leaves, and those will actually be the radish leaves. So our radishes are doing great. We're gonna let them grow one more week before we do anything else with those, but doing good. Then let's look over here. A lot of you guys have thyme. I think the thyme was pretty sad when we transplanted it. If yours is like mine, it's popping up a little bit, being a little bit happier. And then our tomato plants. If you took a picture last week of your tomato plant, and then again this week, I think it grew like 50% its size. And then Sean, if you could zoom over on this big one. Maybe back up a little bit, sorry, just give a shot. So if you got one of the bigger tomato plants, that's what yours might look like. And notice on both the tomato plants, on mine at least, the lower set of leaves looks a little yellow. That is super common with tomato plants when you replant them. They just, remember last week we talked about stress? They just get a little bit stressed when you transplant them. So that's likely what that yellowing is, and they should bounce back by next week, or they'll be growing new leaves, so they probably won't use those bottom leaves anymore. We might even prune them off, but we want to give it another week or so to get used to its new pot before we do anything else with our tomatoes. Then we got Thai basil. Hopefully yours is looking just happy to be in a big pot. Cilantro. My cilantro that I planted with you guys last week is not coming up yet, so if yours is not coming up, that is fine. But if you look over here, this cilantro I planted one day sooner, and it is starting to pop up. You can see those little codling leaves there. So you might see a few sprouts in your cilantro, you might not. Either one is fine. This is about the time that they would be starting to do anything at all. Then, last but not least, come up here. The featured plant of the day, parsley. All right, now this pot of parsley, I know we talked about last week pulling, if you had like 4 plants in there, pulling them apart. On this one, some plants liked that better than others. I think some of them got their roots kind of messed with better than others. So I'm going to show you what to do with this if your plants are looking like this. This one right next to it, this was my parsley that came with only 1 plant. That one looks a lot happier because it didn't get its roots so disturbed. So I'm going to show you what to do in either case. All right, now if you can, just get a good picture on the parsley. We're going to start with the one that didn't fare so well. So, the deal with plants is that if they have dead plant material on them, they are not going to be as likely to grow new material. Something you want to make sure that you do is just trim away with your scissors any dead plant material. And what this is going to do actually is stimulate the plants to grow new leaves. Maybe some of you have ever heard the saying, the more you pick flowers, the more they will grow. It is also true with leafy vegetables. The more you pick them, the more they will grow. So, the first thing I did was just trim away any dead plant material. Okay, what I'm left with is a little bit of nice looking parsley. On this plant, actually, a lot of nice looking parsley. But see this parsley, it's getting so big, it's like drooping over. It's time for all of this parsley to get a nice haircut and maybe the chance to start over. So, here's the really important thing. The parsley needs leaves in order to feed itself. Leaves are the chefs of the plant. They're the cooks. They make the sugars for the plant. They take the sunlight, they turn it into sugar energy for the plant to eat. So if you cut off all the leaves, the plant will essentially starve. It won't be able to eat from sunlight anymore. But if we cut off big, droopy leaves, then, don't want to do that one because that's the plant's only leaf, right? If we cut off the big droopy leaves, I'm going to do that on this one too. Here, this one's no good. Getting rid of it. These are good ones. Then, look at these neat little parsleys. The plant will be stimulated to grow more. The more you pick your parsley, the more it will grow. But just remember to always leave some parsley behind, or they will starve. And also, another thing I want to share with you is that I put the parsley up on my deck. Of all these things, the parsley is the only thing that rabbits would like to eat. So if you have a way to get your parsley like a little bit away from the ground, then it'll be more protected from rabbits. So now we get to move on to post-harvest handling. When you're finished harvesting most things, and not all, but most things, what they really want is a nice cool bath. What that does is it takes the heat out of it, and water makes its way into the leaves, into the vegetable, and it gets puffed up. It puffs up the cells. The plant gets stronger and tastier looking, and so you're going to want to let it soak in water for about 5 minutes in nice cool water, and that gets the heat out of there and cleans them up at the same time. Okay, after about 5 minutes you can take it out, and then you're going to just shake it dry. If you're outside, if you're in your kitchen, be doing this in your sink. And then this is a fun little tip that not that many people know about parsley, and this works for your cilantro too, is that if you store it like in a vase, in a jar with water, it will actually last longer than if you put it in a bag in the fridge. It's just like a flower that you cut, and it'll suck up water from the stems, and I've actually had parsley that I had in the fridge and it was like really droopy and sad, and then I put it in a vase of water like this and it perked right up. So this is a little known way to save your parsley. So there you go. There's your first harvesting lesson. And before we go, I want to talk a little bit more about how interesting parsley is. Parsley comes from the family Umbelliferae, and the family Umbelliferae, the common thing that they all have is that they have a flower that looks like an umbrella. So hopefully I'm going to have a picture in here for you so you can see what that looks like. But when these send up their flower, it's like a lot of little stems and then like this beautiful tiny little flowers that's kind of in the shape of an umbrella. Other plants that you might know about that are in the family Umbelliferae. Carrots. You can tell these kind of look a little bit like carrots, don't they? Carrots, celery, what else? Dill. If you've ever seen snow on the mountain, it's a plant that people plant around in their gardens a lot. That's an Umbelliferae. And a thing that I think is really interesting about the family Umbelliferae is that the swallowtail butterfly uses it as its exclusive kind of food. So swallowtail butterfly, they're those yellow butterflies with the long tails. Those kind of butterflies, what they'll do is they'll come and they'll land on your plants, they'll lay their eggs, and then when their eggs hatch, the caterpillars actually eat the plants. They don't eat so heavily that it ruins your plants. So if you do see a swallowtail butterfly flying around your plants, know that it's kind of cool that you're feeding that butterfly. So that is it for checking on your garden today. And now I have for you, Sean, you want to come around here? Can you get a close-up of our garden journal here? All right, so today's garden journal, you write the date, whatever date you're doing this, write the date, and then what I want you to do is either draw or describe what each plant is doing this week. Okay, so this will probably take you a little while, but you might say things, you might want to like list what they are, like radish, and if you're like me, maybe you want to do both. Oh, we have our ejecting pen here. Hopefully that doesn't happen to you guys too much. And I might draw, here's the pot. I might show that they have all these little leaves growing. They've all sprouted. Or maybe I want to do like a close-up view, that if I looked from the side, the radish would, I'm going to go down and look at it a little bit, it would look like this. Right? And like down, if you noticed on the bottom of the stems, it's kind of red. And then the top of the stems, it's white. That's what your radish is going to look like. So I might want to say new sprouts. Maybe I want to count my sprouts, say how many are growing. Maybe I want to say they're like 1/2 inch tall right now. This is just an example, but go through each of your crops: radish, parsley, thyme, basil, cilantro, and tomato, and make some notes on each of your crops. My parsley, I certainly want to say that I harvested it today, and I'm going to say that I left one set of leaves. I might draw a picture of that too. It's up to you. You can do both. You can do description or just a drawing. And then I'm going to switch to the back here. I think I'm going to go right there. Okay, and now we have our first harvest. So you're going to write the date. You're going to write H because it's a harvest. And we're going to write Italian parsley. And then you're going to try to describe how much you harvested. I've got 6, 8 stems, but that's from 2 pots. So I'm guessing it's not as much for you all, but you can say how much parsley you harvested. Okay, and then the question of the day, after you record what everything looks like. Here we go. The question of the day is, what do you think about when you think of gardening? And I'd love for you to just like journal a page or so on that one. Gardening is something that a lot of people I've noticed have a lot of memories that they like to talk about. A lot of times gardening reminds people of a family member that used to do it with them. Sometimes it reminds them of lots of like fresh tastes and smells. Maybe it reminds you just of hard work. But gardening tends to promote a lot of feelings in a lot of different people. So I thought it might be nice to spend a little bit of time writing that down. And that is it for lesson 2. And we're gonna say goodbye to our cameraman. Thank you, Sean. And goodbye. We'll see you next week. Oh, I did forget something. What should you do with your parsley? Here, I'm gonna give you the camera again. If you have never cooked with parsley before, chop it really small. A great way to start cooking with parsley is put it on some eggs or potatoes. Eggs or potatoes, they just improve their quality a lot if you put parsley on them. Something my mom used to make is she would melt butter and then put the chopped up parsley in the butter, and then we would pour that butter over potatoes. It was really delicious. Parsley can also go in about like any soup or pasta that you make too. So you got a lot of choices, and I'm interested to hear about what you decided to do with your parsley and what you think about when you think of gardening. Thanks, everybody.